Another superstar coming up next, and I've just found out he loves a Kraken and Coke. We only had a couple last night. We'll have a couple more tonight. Ben Watts is a visual effects artist and motion designer from Swan Hill, Australia. He works in broadcast design and enjoys creating tutorials in his spare time. Not that he has much anymore because he's just so damn good. Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Swan Hill, please welcome Ben Watts.
My name's Ben Watts. I'm from BW Design, and I'm a freelance Houdini effects artist from a small town about 3.5 hours north of Melbourne. And I think the thing that I love the most about my work is just the massive amount of variety in it. And it's probably best if I just show you my reel and give you a better sense of what that sort of consists of and what it looks like. All right. Thank you. Thanks, guys. There we go. All right. So yeah, as you can see, like there's a lot more obviously that I could probably shove in there. It's pretty quick, but it gives you a bit of a sense of, like I said, some of the different things that I get to work on, and it keeps it interesting. I don't know if I mentioned just then, but all my work's actually done remote, so I don't work in house. So I'm really lucky. I get to grow up next to my kids and family and work on these dream jobs. So really fortunate. I sort of started my journey in motion design around 2007, just through self-learning, like a lot of us probably have, and just via the internet. I started off with After Effects, and I was lucky enough to pick up some jobs doing local TVCs, TV commercials, and various other sort of smaller projects, and I did that for a number of years, and just I never really knew, I suppose, what it was exactly that I wanted to focus on and make the forefront of my career. So I was going through the motions, pardon the pun, for probably quite a few years, just with After Effects, and it was good. Like, I learned a lot of stuff, and that was I think one thing though that I always wanted to do is to get into 3D, and I picked up 3ds Max, funnily enough, out of all the packages that were around. I started to use that, and that was good because it gave me the basic skills to do all the usual stuff that you want to do in a 3D package. I learned how to do some organic modeling, some hard surface stuff, how to texture things, what UVs were, all that sort of stuff. So that's, I guess, where it began, and I've actually put together a little video of some of the work that I was sort of doing, because I used to do some motion templates and stuff, which probably some of you guys have dabbled in as well, like Video Hive and stuff. So I put together a little video from around about the 2010 era, so you can have a look at what my work looked like around that time. There we go. Okay. So this was interesting because I didn't know what my style was. I had no clue. You can see there's sort of a mixture of things here. But when I dug back through this and I was trying to put some clips together of stuff that wasn't super embarrassing, I was like, this is like lens flare and glitch porn. Like, there's just so many glitches and lens flares, and why are there so many freaking arrows? Like, there's just arrows everywhere. So it was funny to look back on that. So fast forward to sort of 2013, I'm still doing motion design as my bread and butter. That's how I'm earning an income. And I picked up Cinema 4D, and I did a few tutorials in Cinema 4D. I don't know what possessed me to actually make tutorials. I've got no clue still to this day. But I'm really glad I did, because it allowed me to gain somewhat of a following online, and I I think it really catapulted my career just by people knowing my stuff that was out there. You know, you've got to expose yourself to the danger of people seeing your work, or you know, no one's going to know who you are, right? So I would do motion design during the day, and I'd dabble in C4D on the side. And you know, one of the things though that I was always doing in C4D was like making explosions and doing those things in C4D that, you know, most people probably would be in a package like Houdini if they were trying to do these types of things. And I really got an interest in technical effects at that time, so I had a great time using C4D and all that, but I think I might have been in it for the wrong reasons. So oops, too far. I did that for about a year and a half, and as I said, I did multiple tutorials, but then I was seeing a lot of cool Houdini stuff online, so I thought, you know, it's time to bite the bullet. I'm gonna have a go at this. And you know, earning from motion design and not 3D, I was able to sort of switch packages without too much hassle, you know, because I didn't have clients that relied on C4D work and all that stuff. So I spent many long nights, crazy hours, just trying to dig deep into Houdini, because I'm not a technical person inherently. Like I don't have a technical bone in my body, or I'd like to say that I kind of do a little bit now, but back then, like, you know, I knew a normal was required to make shading look decent and work properly and stuff like that, but I didn't know like what you could do with that in Houdini. You could make custom forces with it, all this crazy stuff. So, you know, I'm digging into this thing at night time, and you know, just trying to get up to speed with it quickly. And I've been using it for about 3 months, and I put out a tutorial in Houdini actually, and it got a lot of traction, and people were really interested in it. So that was really surprising to see. People were saying to me, like, you were just using the C4D the other day, like, what's going on here? Like, how are you able to pick this up? And I think it was just like I'd found my passion, you know what I mean? It's just, it's like that sometimes. You've just got to find your way through trying different stuff. I'd been doing that for a little while, and I got the opportunity to take an in-house job at a studio in Sydney through a friend for 3 weeks. And I'd never done a Houdini job let alone in-house. I'd never gone away from the family really for an extended period of time. You know, had a young baby at home, and so I went and I did that gig, and it was really good. Like, it was a good eye opener to see how the in-house environment works. I kind of was a bit like, these guys know I've been using Houdini, but I haven't been doing it long. So how the hell am I going to do the effects that are required and all that sort of stuff? But I figured it out. You know, it wasn't that bad. They were really understanding, and they knew that I was new to the software, so it went over fairly well. I got home from that gig, and then I get a random email, which turned out to probably be the biggest and most critical turning point in my career. Was from a German studio who just won a pitch for a Nike job, and I saw the email, and they wanted me to go over to Munich, and I'm like, I just got home, and like that was a big deal and all that stuff. I can't go to Germany, but it's the biggest opportunity in my career. What do I do? I said I couldn't go, and luckily enough, they actually said, we don't care, we just want to work with you, we've seen your stuff online for years. And I took that gig, and you know, I've really never looked back since. Like, I've been in effects now for almost 4 years, and you've seen the sort of stuff that I get to work on. That's just a tiny amount of it, but what it pushed me into doing was like learning some coding skills. Like I said, technical, like I had to take a Code Academy course on JavaScript just to learn the fundamentals of how to code and what it meant to, like, how to write a for loop and what does it do, and all the stuff that you typically, I guess you'd know some of this stuff before you went into a more technical program. So I'm not saying that you need to know these things in a package like Houdini, but it's really helped me. So so I did that, and yeah, that's sort of where I'm at now. I'm doing my thing, and a lot more comfortable obviously now. So what I'm going to talk about next actually is something a little bit more specific. I did a talk at SIGGRAPH in Vancouver in August, and at the start of my talk I explained how, like, when you get into a situation where you've got to create effects, one problem that comes your way when you're in Houdini, for example, is there's nothing built in that's going to allow you to, like, drive or control these effects. For example, like if I've got to make a building crumble from top to bottom, yeah, I can make it like do that, but like how do I do it intricately and like add variation and all that sort of stuff. And so when I made the switch from C4D to Houdini, C4D's got all the great, plane effectors and shader effectors and all these great tools to do all this stuff. And I was like, there's nothing. So I literally had to come up with something. Like I'm super new in here. I've had to come up with a solution. So I touched on this briefly at SIGGRAPH, and then talked about all the other stuff. And then I got bombarded with emails like, what is this thing you made? Like, how do I do it? What's it consist of? So I thought it'd be a good thing to talk about and just show a little bit about my process and how I build things. And it's quite a simple thing, well, to me anyway. I hope I can break it down for guys that don't use this software or aren't interested in this software enough so that you can take something away from it. But so in a nutshell, what it is, it's a tool that you take an object, it creates UVs on that object, and they're just planar UVs. They could be, X, Y, Z, whatever. It's keyframeless, so you say between frame 1 and 100, wipe left to right, up or down, radially, whatever. So it's kind of automated in that sense. It's got built-in noise functions to add variation. It's got an RGB mode, so that's really good if you've got like a part of a mesh where you want to affect it with displacement, say over here, but you want to like eat away the tail end of it, sort of thing. So you've got a bit more control having 3 zones of influence. And then it's just got a regular float mode, so it could just be, adding like a ripple or something like that. Again, it's real time, it's not a simulation. And the 3 areas I sort of wanted to hit with the tool was that it can handle linear transitions, radial, and it can work on curves. So I'm just going to, what I'm going to do is show you a couple of examples. These are R&D shots, so don't go too hardcore on the critique of the rendering. But it just shows you a couple of effects that I've used this tool for and how to deal with the problems that were associated with that. So I'm just going to play this. There's no audio or anything, so some pretty abstract stuff. But just take note, like everything has variation. Some of the Nike stuff. Don't drink alcohol, kids, that's what happens. No. And yeah, more shoes. Here's the curve stuff at play. So you can see all that variation in the threads and all the weaving and stuff like that. So without building something like this, I feel like I would have been, in a lot of trouble in terms of time management and stuff like that. So it's a really great skill to have and know how to do something like this. I'm just going to talk through the sort of 3 major components of what this is and explain what I'm doing here. I'll just probably have to watch this one over here. So if you take any object, you can essentially just assign just basic UVs to that object. In this case, again, it's just planar UVs. And then in Houdini, you can jump up and down levels of well, they're called context, I suppose. And I just create a node to get access to some of the properties that are inherent of that object, like how many points there are, the point numbers, all that sort of stuff. So this might be, if you're a C4D person, this might be more close to something like espresso. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking those UVs that I've just assigned to that object, and if I plug them into color, I can visualize them. So now it's just like having a set of coordinates on this object, right? And the cool thing about that is what I can now do is, because they're locked to the object, not only is it great for when I move it around, they're going to stay local to that object, is I can plug those coordinates into another node, which will actually allow me just to offset those across the surface, right? So what I'm just setting up here is I'm taking the frame and I'm fitting that into something which might be, I think it's called a range mapper or something like that in Espresso. I never really use that much. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm just saying, take whatever the current frame is and allow me to fit that between, say, 0 and 100 or whatever. This is where the automation comes in. So I'm not actually like relying on keyframes. I'm telling it the minimum and maximum values this effect is going to occur across, like the time frame it's going to occur across. All right, so that's all well and good, but then we're going to need a ramp so we can actually squash the values or clamp them and get a bit more control there. So that's what I've done there with that yellow node. And the most important part here, I suppose, or one of the most important parts is here, given these are just positions on the surface, what I want to do is I actually want to add noise to those positions, which will effectively displace them, which is what you're seeing now. And this is where you get variation in the edge. All right, and this becomes really powerful because a director's never going to say you do like a linear wipe. Thanks, mate. That looks really good. Like, it's just that's never going to happen. So you need to have these little tricks up your sleeve, So what I'm doing a bit of housekeeping here, naming stuff. I probably should have left that out, but I'm essentially like in this lower context. So I've just jumped back up now, but I've promoted those parameters up to that higher level. This is like the top level. If you get my drift there. All I'm really doing here is I'm showing you that I can scrub the timeline. This effect will just propagate across the surface. I'm adjusting some of the noises and stuff like that, and I'm just kind of like showing a little bit, I suppose, of what it looks like when it moves across, what you can change, what you can alter and vary. You've got things like roughness controls, frequency of the noise, all this sort of stuff, like things you'd kind of expect to be able to control, right? But remember, this is only a couple of nodes, so it's not like a complicated system here. I think though the best part though is the keyframeless thing, and I'm sure you guys will agree with that. It's pretty cool to be able to just slap it down on an object and go from here to here over this amount of time. So got the grid going there, and now just plug a sphere in there just to show you can just plug any object into it, and does the same thing effectively. So yeah, it's kind of a good solution in that you can just bang it on anything. And this, like I said, I use this so much just to get up and running and get things going quickly. That's kind of a real lifesaver. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the component, which would be if you've got something like, you need to do a knitting effect or something like that, but you need the curves to like wiggle and come on with variation, right? That's a lot of this system is the same, but I'll talk about a few differences. So I've just got a curve. I'm displacing it with 3D noise, so it looks like a spaghetti noodle, and it's just same thing here. It's just taking the current position and adding some 3D noise to it, and playing with the frequencies and amplitude just to sort of see, what looks good. This is really just a thing where I'm doing a few tests. Then I just sweep that curve so I get some thickness. So we've got that now. We've got an actual surface on there. I assign normal, so see the normal directions there, the little blue spikies pointing out. That's really critical because I'm going to use that as my displacement direction to push these curves out, because now I'm going to kill away the polygons and it leaves me just with the curves, right? So thinking about the things I just talked about with the effect moving over the surface, that's all well and good, but I need these curves to like have variation and different like timing offsets. So you can see here in the white, that's what that's sort of showing. It was really quick, I know, but you can see that they're not all coming on at the same time. And what I'm actually doing is I can get access to the number of each primitive or curve, we'll call it. It's called a primitive in Houdini. And I can say subtract that a random number or a random curve from that amount that effect moves across the surface, and that's how we get the randomization there. Now I'm actually displacing those curves along that normal that I mentioned a minute ago, so I can push them outwards. Same sort of thing, I can take a random value based on any given curve number in that geometry and sort of subtract that from the equation, which will just break things up, make it look a little bit more interesting, and all of a sudden you kind of have an effect that just looks a bit more organic and a bit more interesting. So I can sort of play this back now, and within a couple of nodes you've got this. So you can imagine how valuable something like this could be, because you don't have to displace it out along its normals. You can do whatever you want. You can make it move however you want. But yeah, I'm just changing the amplitude on that there, making it pretty crazy. So yeah, another instance of how this really became critical in some of those Nike jobs where I had to like make shoes just come out of nowhere from threads and things like that. Like they're just good things to have in your back pocket. I think that's done. All right, moving on. All right. What's that playing? So, you guys in C4D love your cloner object. I know that. It's awesome. Used to use it all the time. Just going to sort of show how this would fare in a situation where you've got a heap of clones. I've just got a grid. I've got my effect, which now it's wrapped up in a digital asset. So now it's become, instead of two separate little thingies, it's one tool, which is that red node. And it's just got the controls promoted to the top level, so it's like a user-friendly, almost like a plugin, right? So I've got just a bunch of points, and I've cloned some cubes on there. Now I'm just showing the radial part of it, so I didn't break that down as to what that consists of, but if you just take an average of the amount of points on a piece of geometry, there's your center, and then you can calculate the distance from every other point in the mesh to that center. That's basically what you do. So yeah, I'm just sort of showing, because this tool, if you think about it, like the values that it outputs, it's just between 0 and 1, so it's a normalized output, and really it's just a multiplier for anything you want to create or drive on this mesh. And so I'm just sort of playing with the settings here, showing a few different variations, and yeah, I guess sort of showing that there's a lot of possibilities. What I'm doing here, if you're interested, the reason the colors varied is because I'm saying, if the height in Y goes above a certain value, color this point, this color, and it plugs into a ramp. That's how I get the variation, the colors. Now I'm showing the linear mode again, and yeah. So there's two conditions that this thing's affecting right now. You can see it's affecting the color and it's affecting the scale of those clones, and that's all it's all wrapped up in that little purple node down the bottom, which is just a little bit of code. I talked about that earlier, I touched on that. Learning, even if it's minimal code in Houdini, goes a long way. I can just write a couple lines and implement the scaling, the color, all that sort of stuff. You can do it with nodes if you want to as well, but it makes you feel like you're pretty cool if you can do it with code. That's the main reason I do it. No. You guys just got volumes, you fancy bastards. So we've had it for a long time. So what I'm showing here is I can plug an object into this. So it's a volume representation, assigned distance field, if you guys are up with your volume lingo. But it's a representation of the object where at the surface it's 0. Outside the surface it registers as 1, and inside is -1. So I think I got that right. I'm on the spot. But yeah, I'm just showing you can plug an object into this thing and it'll give you a fall off. I've got it moving in quite an awkward way, funnily enough, but you can just remap those values. Very similar to what I've sort of been seeing with the C4D fields and stuff like that. So I thought that might be a little bit relevant, given you guys have just got a nice new set of tools. Alright, this bad boy. Alright, so I mentioned about the big sort of first job that I got onto with the Nike stuff early on, and part of one of those jobs was this, it was like a balloon, and it had to like be wrapped with multiple different types of knit. And sometimes I feel like I'm a grandmother because I get so many knitting jobs. It's insane. But this thing, like what I'm going to show is it's three things. It's the animatic, some test renders, and then close to what the final would have looked like. So I had to come up with all these ways of these threads coming on, right? And if you look, like there's 3 different types, like different layouts and things like that. But if you look at the way this sort of moves, it kind of looks like it's simulated, right? Like it has that sort of quality to it. Like it's got a bit of offset, it's got a bit of floatiness, all that sort of thing. But when I actually had to do the effect, I thought, well, what if there was another way? What if we could do this in a non-simulated way? And that's exactly what I did. So, and how I did it was with the good old tool. Out it comes again. So I had this this piece of the balloon, and this thing's it's already UV'd, right? And if you want to know more about how this actually has good UV coordinates or anything like that, hit me up later on. I'll explain the process of getting something like this flattened out. But yeah, this thing in this case is already UV'd. So all I really had to do was like squash the UVs in the x-axis in this case. And if I throw down the trusty old fall off node that I created, and I visualize that, have a look at the like the pattern it gives. Like I saw that and I was like, I thought it kind of looks, like the way that cloth would kind of fold, behave. And I was like, we might have something here. So, so what I did was I took some normals from a sphere, because the normals that sort of were on that object were a little bit sketchy. So if I just take a sphere and transfer them across with some fall off, I'll get something that's a little bit more even. So that's what I did here. And this is again, it's a displacement direction thing. So I get these spherical normals, so I can push this thing out off the surface. And so now we can see we've got my nice, actually, let me explain that. So that wobbly thing you just saw was another instance of the geometry which I've warped and I've pushed out along its normals, and I'm using that nice clothy-like map to morph essentially between the two states. And so you can see as this plays back, like it's got a cut at the back of it, the cloth. It didn't matter to have that because we're never going to see it anyway in the final spot. But yeah, I can actually I can take that the output of that tool, and I can use it as a multiplier or a driver, you could think of it as, to morph between this bigger wobblier shape and the tight shape that ends up being our final shape on the balloon. And this is the RGB mode I touched on earlier too. The great thing about this is now I've got 3 zones of influence. So here I can establish an alpha channel in the viewport, and I can get rid of the ugly blue part, I think it was. Yeah, it's gone, see? So now it was there, now it's gone, and all of a sudden we've got a really nice quick solution to a problem that could have been a lot more technical and caused a lot more headaches, all through the use of building this thing with a few nodes. So if we look at this merge back with the original geometry, you can see it fits perfectly because it ends up being the original geometry. So it's kind of like working backwards in a way. But yeah, it ended up being a nice solution to this problem. So yeah, just another example there. Now, again with the knitting, there's so much knitting. So it's a really noisy render, don't worry about that. This effect, I gotta keep talking about this thing till I just flog it to death, but I'm going to show you how to do this. Why not? So get a square piece of knit or thread, and what we're going to do, we're not going to use the tool actually here. We're going to just talk about like a simple incarnation of the radial transition. I'm going to take this thing, this patch of knit, it's just a heap of points, and I'm going to, like I said, measure the distance between the center point on this mesh and every other point in the mesh, and just do a similar thing to what's in that tool, but without using it. It's a lot more simplified, so I didn't have to do that. But yeah, in this case, I can just manually animate this thing. I'm manually animating the maximum distance is what I'm doing, and that's how it sort of opens up from the center out. So yeah, that's what I'm doing there. I'm adding noise to it again to add some variation. Sort of just playing with the fall off just to see what looks good, what feels right. I'm adjusting noises and stuff here, but you can't even see that. Like the edge, it is getting some stuff going on there. It might be difficult to see, I don't know. Then I basically blast away anything that's blue, so I delete it, right? So I've got to get these threads coming in from way out in space to essentially grow this thing. So I took the radial transition. You would have just seen the color switch. I did another instance of that now that I've blasted away that extra geometry, and I've remapped it. And I'll do this several times so I can re-establish zones of influence. So now I've got the red, green, and blue zones looking slightly different. I'm tweaking the noise again just to get a bit of a feel for sort of what kind of displacement I want to see in the surface. Here, I'm just creating an attribute, which is like a weight value that I plug into this smooth. And I'm just saying anything that's green, smooth that guy, but leave the red and the blue areas out of it. So if I zoom in, hopefully you can see this as I turn this on and off. Yep, you can see that. That's cool. And then I displace in the positive Y direction anything that's green. Right? So I start to get this. It starts to get a bit more interesting. So yeah, you can use as much or as little of this displacement as you want. But this is where the effect goes from something super plain into something that can you can layer it up and create more detail and make it look a bit nicer. So using a little bit of Vex code here, just saying if any given point has one neighbor, put it in a group. That's why I love code. It's just, how do I do that otherwise? Like, I don't even know. But it's so good because I can select all those guys on the outer rim of this thing where I deleted that part away, and then I select them and I pull them out, I scale them out like you can see here, so it looks like this big weird thing. But the thing is now I've got no points in between the outer edge and where I stretch them from, so I've got to resample them to establish new points. So I'm going to lay down another version of that radial ramp in a second to again re-establish my fall-off zones. See that there? So now I've just changed that up again. And this is important because the next phase of this is going to be like integrating a pattern into the center of this so it doesn't just look like a big piece of poo that has a bit of ripple in it. It's actually, this was for a mattress spot, a mattress commercial, and I need the pattern of the mattress to pop up through the center of this thing so it actually looks like something. So I'm adding a little bit of noise to that green area now and you can really see that in the render. You can't really tell what it's doing so much here, but I'm just displacing that a little bit. Now, and this is the part where it kind of looks a bit more interesting, I suppose, is I take a geometry representation of my mattress surface. I turn it into a volume, right? Looks weird. There's my volume, big pile of clouds. Can't tell you anything. And then I sample the values of that volume, and I use that to again displace whatever area I like. In this case, it's going to be the red area because that's where the action needs to happen. And if I visualize what that volume sample looks like, this is what we get with this really cool pattern. I can smooth that out or keep it hard, whatever I want to do. But the fun part happens in the next node is when I use that pattern. See that now? I can just use that as a mask essentially for my displacement. I can go as high or as low as I want with that thing, and I get something that all of a sudden sort of has a bit more life about it, something usable. And then once I've sort of done that, for the most part, it's pretty much good to go. I'm going to probably smooth out some of the green area again. It looks a bit noisy. So I use that weight attribute that I talked about earlier. You can just establish that based on the green value of the color in the mesh. You can see that I'm just tidying that up a little bit. It looked a bit ratty. And then you can add some thickness to it. Bad demo. Sorry about that. Not good. Yeah. I'll show the render again after this, but I mean you can visualize the thickness in the viewport, but if you've got Redshift like I know you should have, it's just so easy and quick to view it or render it while you're doing it. So it's really just as a backup sort of thing that you'd have the thickness in the viewport. Just to have another look at the result of that, you can sort of see now that you've heard me explain it. If you look around the areas all the dense areas before that it hits the threads that shoot off into space. You can see all the little intricate pieces of noise that are bumpy and up and down. That's what comes from taking the time to change up those areas of influence and just put in those little details. That's it, guys. Thanks so much.
Questions for Ben? Stand up, yell it out.
He said, "I've got a nice tool."
You've got you've got a nice...
And do I know when to stop tweaking it?
You've got a nice...
Sorry, I had to.
Yeah.
No, he said the tool looked good, and do I kind of know how to get the best out of it? Is that fair to say? Without going overboard and... Yeah, definitely nowadays. I built that thing a long time ago. It's kind of gone through a few iterations. It does a lot of other stuff as well. I've got some growth algorithms and things like that going on as a subset, and another way, I suppose, to propagate attributes across surfaces. I've spent a lot of time building assets and things that have it's really designed to travel across geometry and things like that and bring these effects to life. So I've got quite a kit of things, but yeah, definitely know what to do a lot more so nowadays with that. If that answers your question. No?
How do you know when to stop tweaking?
Yeah, I know. Ask my wife now. How do I know? Look, it's just an experience thing. There's a limit to how far you can go with these things, and you just, I'm going to always be in constant feedback with the team that I'm working with. So, they're going to rein me in if I'm over tweaking. So, you know what I mean? It's just an experience thing. You do know up until a point, but there's always going to be someone generally the other end that'll step in if you go too far.
How do you find working in isolation?
It's good. Well, I've got a good situation. I really enjoy it. Like I said, I've been in house, and it was okay. But being able to do what I do nowadays, I probably would find it very hard to go back to an environment like that. It just feels extremely unique, and
you just don't like people?
Yeah, they're just bricks most of the time.
So do you work from home, literally?
I do. I literally work from home. Yeah, so big on Slack channels, big on Skype, lots of meetings, all that sort of stuff. Via the net. But
well, that's the exciting thing. Obviously, in this day and age, you can work anywhere. Remote Australia,
you can
somewhat remote, and work anywhere. More questions? Don't be shy. Yep. Yes, you with the glasses. Is putting yourself out there, does it help you get more work?
Yeah, well, I feel like I wouldn't be in this position if I didn't do that. I did that when I started doing the whole tutorial thing, I had no idea it would turn into this. It was just a hobby thing. Like I said, I was getting paid to do motion and After Effects and arrows and glitches and stuff. So, definitely, if I look back over the past 4 years or so, even 5 years, that's how I got known. That's how I established my brand, I guess, was just through that exposure. And I think if you're out there and in people's faces, you're going to be on the tip of their tongue when it comes to hire someone that's doing that type of work that that you're probably doing. So if you just hide in the shadows, no one's going to see you.
And that's how I learnt of you. Firstly, as when you were doing Cinema 4D shoots, and they helped me, they helped others that I know of, and then you're moving into Houdini, and then I guess you wouldn't get invited to things like this if you didn't have a bit of a profile through that education that you're doing for people.
It's true. I'm not really active on forums and big into that sort of stuff. So if it hadn't been through social media and that exposure, people wouldn't have a clue about anything that I did. So
I'm glad we know what you do.
Well, it's worked out okay so far.
Anyone else? Drew again.
I talked about at the start of the talk that I was a non-technical person, but clearly I am somewhat technical. How did I make that jump? Is that? Yep. Wow, that's a really good question.
JavaScript, wasn't it?
Yeah. So the JavaScript course that I did. So when I was doing the job with the German studio, I was working with a super technical guy there, like crazy code experience. Like he's like a wizard, but he was building all this shit in Houdini from scratch. And what are you doing? Like, there's nodes that do that, sort of thing. And so we had a really good dynamic where I was showing him things, he was showing me things. It really inspired me to like figure out a way to learn like a lot of this fundamental stuff, and I got on and did that Java course, and at the end I still didn't know how to do a lot of it, but it was enough to kickstart me in a direction where I could just not feel scared of that sort of stuff, and I could go off on my own accord and just continue the learning. So I reckon that was like the turning point, because prior to that, man, I wouldn't know like how to build curl noise or anything like that, none of that stuff. So it's I really think that was a critical thing.
And that's why I wanted Ben to be here today, even if some of that went over your head and Houdini's not for you. Today's really about thinking differently, putting yourself out of your comfort zone, putting yourself out there, thinking in new ways, exposing you open to new options, which Ben's done amazingly through his career. We had a question over here.
Compared to other 3D softwares,
Yep.
I've heard, through memes on the internet, Houdini's learning curve is dangerously horrific. Like, there are traps along the way and
You will have to do
things
a few human
whispering in
sacrifices.
your ear saying, no, you should just give up. So you mentioned a lot about that job you took in Germany. Was
Yep.
that sort of your turning point that got you over that and gave you the confidence to move forward?
I think what it was, no, not really, because prior to that, like I'd already been in there a year. So I think I saw the work and it inspired me so much, and it wasn't anyone specific. And then, just to side note that, there was not much learning material around when I picked up Houdini either, so there was bugger all. Like now there's so much. Like if you wanted to pick it up now, you'd be so much, I feel like you'd be so much better off than what I was. But it's, I was kind of like into it prior to that, and I put in my first Houdini tutorial about 3 months after I'd been using it, and I did have people say to me, "But you were just using Cinema 4D. Like, what's going on?" I'm like, "Well, I put in like crazy time, like to sort of fast track it." But look, it was hard in that there was just so much stuff that you had to become familiar with that's just given to you in other packages. You just, I feel like at that point it can either like really discourage you or just you go, no, I need to know how and why. And I think I've always been a how and why person. So that's why I gravitated towards it.
So pretty much just give it time and pull through.
You got to give it some time.
I think you've got to make a bit of a commitment to Houdini if you do want to learn it or pick it up. You can't just expect to learn it quickly.
I think that's the thing. Like it isn't like a short-term thing. Like C4D is so awesome in that it's so accessible.
Just say that again for the sponsors.
C4D is pretty damn good.
It is awesome. Yeah.
But it's because the learning curve is very nice. There's great tools built in, and nowadays, like I think when I was using it, it was like R14 or something like that back in the historic ages.
Yeah.
The stuff you guys have now, because I really keep up to date with what's going on. I love the technology and love to see it evolve. Had big, long conversations with a lot of C4D guys at SIGGRAPH about, the new fields and the volumes. It was really interesting to see it evolve there. So, yeah, I think, look, you just got to give these things time. It's not going to be comfortable and easy for a lot of people, especially coming from these other packages. But if you want it, you'll make it happen. So, that's...
And I think there's probably a big option these days to get work in this field. It's like visual effects for design is really a big new thing with your man versus machine type
absolutely
workload. Yeah,
the Houdini /motion movement is grown like tenfold since I started. So you can be a destruction pyro guy in a studio if you want, and that's fine. But if you want to do motion with this as well, it's there.
Yeah,
plenty of work.
Just can't do it in After Effects without it crashing. Over here.
So true.
How much code versus nodes?
Yeah, how much coding versus node plugging in any given setup or projects. There's not... Look, I don't code a lot. The thing with code is, and it might be different for someone who's like picks it up a lot more natural to what I did, but if you don't use like a muscle, if you don't use it, it's weak, you forget it, it's out the window like in no time. So there's like I've learned like this much code over a period of time, but there's a small amount that I'll use like daily. So I would say like maybe between 10 and 20%, if that. Sometimes. Yeah, it's more little snippets here and there. Is that what you're asking? Yeah, it's not. I'm not writing like scripts. Like I'm talking like 5-liners, stuff like that.
Which saves you from dropping down 10 nodes.
Yeah,
it's
it
just
does.
a shortcut, really.
It's a real time saver. Like if you're doing particles or something like that, you wouldn't believe how many times just to do, if statements and things like that. Like if this happens, do this. It's just unreal. Like you don't understand until you start to do it. No, so I don't know JavaScript at all. No, it's Vex in Houdini.
It's its own language, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got its own language. But Java, like, it just taught me the fundamentals of code in general. It was just relevant. Like, it was just, when to use a for loop and, when to use an array and what is an array. All that, just the stuff that you would go back to the start and go through and evolve further through the course. Like, it took me ages to get through it. But, if I hadn't done that, I would have been a lot worse off, I think.
Yeah.
So...
Okay, another question. I can't see. I'm
There
blind.
he is.
Oh, no, hang on. Number
Hey!
2. Write it down. Number 2
I
for
knew he
Matthew
was going to get
Packwood.
me.
All right.
I knew it.
So this stuff, like, it is quite complex and it looks a little bit impenetrable. How do you quote for this sort of stuff? And if you're a client or a studio who wants to get this stuff done, how do you estimate the amount for stuff? Because I imagine you would charge a lot because it's so specialised. How do you do estimations, and how do you do estimations on how long the work would take?
So usually they'll shoot me, some boards or a brief, or sometimes it's just words, which isn't that helpful, of course. We've all been there. Sometimes you get some pictures, which is great. You'll get, a bit of a roadmap of what's involved. It's definitely experience, for starters, because if I think back to what it was like a few years ago, it wasn't as easy as what it is now, but I've kind of got this rule, like anything they want, at least write down a week. Like, of course, like you're not going to get anything beautiful done probably prior to that in Houdini. Like, you can do stuff. I can do so much stuff quick, but it's not going to be awesome, you know what I mean? So I'll note that down sort of straight off the bat, and then I'll just see what's involved. Like, it's based on a per job sort of case, you know what I mean? But it's really just take the time, go over the notes, and have you done this before sort of thing. Like, just go back over the setups, think about what I've done in the past, because a lot of the times, like I said about the knitting and that, I've got so many of those setups. If someone comes to me with something like that, I've got a lot of stuff to draw from, so I know I can save time there. So there's no sort of like easy answer to that. You've just got to like analyze what they've given you and sort of go with experience. But knowing that nothing's going to be quick, you know what I mean? Like, you're in for like usually a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, depending. But and if it's simulation-based work, well, that's a whole different kettle of fish again. Clients need to, in a lot of cases, they don't understand the iterating that has to happen with that sort of work. So, there's just a lot of back and forth, a lot of dialogue, and trying to figure these things out. But the most important thing would be just experience, I'd say.
Cool. Thanks very much.
No worries, mate.
Thank you very much, Ben. Big round of applause for Ben, everyone.